Hi, I'm Maximilian Alvarez. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Real News Network and host of the podcast Working People. And this is the Art of Class War on Breaking Points. On February 16th, 379 days after a catastrophic Norfolk Southern train derailment changed life forever for residents, President Joe Biden will finally visit the town of East Palestine, Ohio. According to the White House's official announcement, quote, President Biden will travel to East Palestine, Ohio to meet with residents impacted by the Norfolk Southern train derailment to discuss federal support to the community and hold Norfolk Southern accountable. As President Biden has said from the beginning, the administration will continue to support the people of East Palestine and other affected communities for as long as it takes, including by using every available tool to hold Norfolk Southern accountable, end quote. So, has Biden's administration really delivered for people living in and around East Palestine the way it claims? I would argue no. Is there more this administration, congressional legislators, Republicans and Democrats, and local and state officials can be doing to actually help these people as they continue to deal with the toxic health effects of the chemicals that were spilled and set on fire last year, with the economic devastation the derailment has caused for the community and for individual families, and with the ways this catastrophe has fractured this once close-knit community? I would argue yes, but don't take it from me. Listen to the residents themselves. Over the past year, for my podcast Working People and for the Real News Network, I have published hours and hours and hours of heartbreaking, infuriating, but important firsthand testimony from residents affected by the Norfolk Southern derailment, as well as railroad workers who were all warning anyone who would listen that a catastrophe like what happened in East Palestine was going to happen somewhere if we did not rein in the railroad's greedy, cost-cutting, corner-cutting, profit-maximizing practices. Go and listen to these stories. Listen to what residents are saying and what they are going through. Then tell me if Biden has, quote, delivered for them. Now, we can't discuss all that needs to be discussed on this segment because we only have a short amount of time here. But today on the Art of Class War, I wanted to bring on two guests who can help us break down what Biden's visit to East Palestine actually means, what we can do to get these residents the help they still desperately need, and what we can do to make sure avoidable catastrophes like this do not happen again. Joining me today is Chris Albright and Jeff Kurtz. Chris is a longtime resident of East Palestine. He and his family live just blocks away from the derailment site. Before the derailment, Chris was a healthy, able-bodied gas pipeline worker. Since the derailment and his exposure to the toxic fallout, he has experienced critical heart failure, he can't work, and as of this year, he has lost his employee health care. Jeff Kurtz is a retired railroad engineer, a former Iowa state representative, and is working in a volunteer capacity with the Lee County, Iowa labor chapter. Jeff, Chris, thank you both so much for joining me today on Breaking Points.
Thank you,
Let's
Max.
be here.
Well, like I said, we've got a lot to talk about and only a short amount of time to do it. So I want to dive right in. And Chris, I want to throw the first question at you since you are living there in East Palestine. We've been talking all year about what you and your family have been going through. But for folks who are watching Breaking Points right now, I wanted to ask if you could just talk a bit about the nightmare that you've been living through since February 3rd of last year. Even if most of the media and the rest of the country has forgotten about this national disgrace, this injustice, you guys can't, forget about it because you're living in it. So in a few minutes, can you just sum up for folks watching what life has been like for you since the derailment? And what do you most want people across the country to know about where things currently stand for your family, for your community, and what you guys need?
Well, I definitely agree that the media, the national media, has definitely forgot all about what happened here a year ago. When it first happened, it was big news all over the country. Now nobody remembers it at all. We have been living through hell for the past year. Me personally, I like you said, I'm unable to work right now due to severe heart failure, which I never had prior to this. I was very healthy. I was active. I had a great job. I liked doing what I did. I made decent money. Everything was great. And within 2 weeks after the derailment, I've been unable to work. It's taken an income source for my family, which has really made it hard for us. We're struggling on just living on one income, and with the prices of everything right now, it's very tough to do. Like you said, I've lost my healthcare benefits. With my condition, having a heart issue, that's something I can't do. I can't live without having healthcare benefits. I've been in the hospital 2 times in the past year. Once on Christmas Day, I went into critical care. We need to have healthcare, and I'm not the only one in this community that is suffering things. There are other people here who need this healthcare, who need that to be remembered, to let people know that this is still going on in this town.
Again, as I said earlier, this is and should be a national outrage. We should be absolutely furious that in the quote unquote greatest country on earth, this is what we allow to happen to our people, to our neighbors. I don't give a shit if they are Democrat, Republican. They are people first. They are our people. And this is how we are treating them. This is how they have been abandoned after a catastrophe that none of them are responsible for came onto their doorsteps on February 3rd of last year. Jeff, I want to come to you here because, you and I and your fellow railroad workers spent, an entire year before the derailment in East Palestine talking about the crisis on the freight rail system, how far back that crisis goes, how long it's been building. And we were talking with workers who were literally warning us that something like this was going to happen if your concerns were not addressed. Then, as we know, Congress, both parties, and the White House conspired together to shove a contract down your throats and essentially give the rail carriers everything that they wanted in the high stakes contract negotiations that were playing out since 2020. Then East Palestine happened, literally 2 months after that. In a few minutes, I wanted to ask if you could just tell people, where things stand on the railroads since, the government forced you guys to accept a contract that you did not want. What progress have we made, if any, when it comes to addressing the issues on the railroads that led to the catastrophe in East Palestine and that make our communities continually vulnerable to these kinds of catastrophes every day?
Well, thank you, Max. Quite frankly, very little's been done. There has been some progress as far as getting rest for crews and for other people, but not near as much progress as should have been made. The whole problem of rail safety is a very complex problem, but the major parts of it are pretty easy to solve. And I'll give you 2 examples. We can do something about long trains, but in this legislation that's been proposed, what they propose is to study it for a year, which that gives railroads another year to run these long, heavy trains down people's throats like they did in East Palestine. What they need to do for legislation like that is, if they're going to study it for a year, they need to put in there that we are going to have length and weight limits on these trains before or while we're studying this problem, because simple physics will tell you that is the problem. That is the major problem. Another problem with this legislation is that it leaves open the possibility of one-man crews. And this is the first draft that I saw, and from what I heard, they watered it down. But they say at the very end of the section they do on one-man crews that they can that carriers can provide or can apply for waivers to run one-man crews. We need something that says absolutely no two-man crews. I mean, period. End of discussion. There's too much that goes on. There is 964, or there was when I worked, there was 964 pages of federal regulations that these guys had to follow. There's 567 pages in their General Code of Operating Rules. They get, they're inundated with stuff from their daily orders and things. And this can all change in a minute. There has to be at least two people there to address this. And this is, the problem is they're not listening to the workers. They're not listening to the people that actually do the job. They're listening to people that make money by exploiting the misery that the things that they do causes.
And I think that's powerfully put. And like Jeff is saying here about, the one man or two man crews. I mean, like, we have effectively done nothing to address the larger systemic problem that has turned the railroads into a profit generating machine for Wall Street, right? Which involves cutting staff across the different crafts, cutting the people on the train, cutting the people checking the track, cutting the people checking the cars, looking for faulty bearings like the one that, allegedly caused the derailment in East Palestine, stopping the relentless automation of essential functions that workers all across the railroads serve. Like, we haven't really done any of that, right? And so, like, this is the thing I constantly stress to folks who ask me about East Palestine, since I've been covering it this whole time, is this is one of the greatest industrial accidents in our country's history, and an accident of equal or greater proportion could literally happen again tomorrow because we're not doing anything. The Railway Safety Act that Jeff mentioned, this bipartisan legislation that people made political hay out of a year ago, it's gone nowhere. And the railroad lobbies have been dumping money into Washington to water it down or kill it completely. So that's where we effectively are. And that brings us to the final question. We only have about 2 minutes. I want to toss it to you guys. Let's come back to Biden's visit to East Palestine on February 16th. So, Chris, I want to start with you, then Jeff, toss it over to you. What does this visit to East Palestine mean over a year after the derailment? Like, what can Biden actually do right now to help East Palestine? And what can people watching out there do to help right now?
Well, first of all, I'm glad he's finally coming after a year. One of the most important things that needs to be done is this has to be declared a mass casualty area. We need healthcare. We need to have healthcare. I know for a fact that I'm not the only one at all who is suffering through this right now. We need to have healthcare. He needs to step up. He needs to put in some regulations to make the railways safe.
To follow up with what Chris said, March the 23rd, me and members of the Lee County Labor Chapter, other activists, are going to descend upon East Palestine to bring all this stuff to light. The thing that we can do, and there's a lot that we should be doing, but right now, let's break it down into the major parts. Right now, these people need health care. They can invoke the Stafford Act right now, declare this a mass casualty incident, and give everybody health care, not health insurance, health care for all these people. That is the first and the least that they can do. If you want to see what else you can do, check out the Justice for East Palestine Residents and Workers campaign. There's a Facebook or Meta page. Go to that, and we're going to have more on that. And if anybody wants to show up, please post on there and let us know. We can actually start making differences in our communities. There's a quote from Francis of Assisi about 800 or 900 years ago, and it goes, "Preach the gospel at all times. When necessary, use words." President Biden, don't tell these people you love them. Show them that you love them by giving them health care. That's the first step.
So that was Chris Albright and Jeff Kurtz. Chris is a longtime resident of East Palestine, where he lives just blocks away from the train derailment site with his family. And Jeff Kurtz is a retired railroad engineer, former Iowa State representative, and is working in a volunteer capacity with the Lee County, Iowa Labor Chapter. I want to thank Chris and Jeff again for joining us, and I want to thank you all for watching this segment with Breaking Points. And please be sure to subscribe to my news outlet, The Real News Network, with links in the description to this video. See you soon for the next edition of The Art of Class War. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Solidarity forever.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.